The mansion never slept, but it was never truly awake either. Lights glowed in every hallway. Chandeliers shimmered over polished marble floors, and floor-to-ceiling windows framed the skyline like a painting no one stopped to admire. It was the kind of place designed to impress, not to comfort. Every object had value. Very few had meaning. At 33, Adrian Hale had built an empire most people only dreamed of. Tech, real estate, investments. His name carried weight in rooms filled with people who measured success in numbers and silence. He had mastered both. But lately, the silence had grown louder. His engagement to Vanessa Carter, a poised and striking 29-year-old socialite, was supposed to change that. She was everything his world demanded: elegant, well-connected, effortlessly polished. Their future looked perfect on paper, yet something about it felt rehearsed. Vanessa had moved in 2 months ago, bringing with her a curated life, designer dresses, scheduled charity appearances, carefully timed affection. She filled the house with movement, but not warmth. And then there was the maid, Lena. She had arrived quietly, recommended by a staffing agency known for discretion. 27, soft-spoken, always respectful. She wore simple clothes, tied her dark hair back neatly, and kept her eyes lowered, not out of fear, but habit. She came with one condition. Her 3-year-old son, Matteo, would live with her. Adrian had almost refused. This was not a home for children. Not this house, not his life. But something in the agency's note had caught his attention. Highly reliable, exceptional work ethic, unusual resilience. He agreed, on the condition that the child remain out of sight. And for weeks, that's exactly what happened. Matteo was invisible. No noise, no toys scattered across the marble floors, no laughter echoing through the halls. It was as if the child existed only in theory. Until one evening, everything changed. It was past midnight when Adrian returned home. A long meeting had stretched into longer drinks, and the city lights blurred slightly as he stepped out of his car. The driver wished him good night. Adrian nodded absently. Inside, the house was quiet. Vanessa had already gone to bed. Her schedule never bent for anyone, not even him. Adrian loosened his tie as he walked toward the kitchen. He didn't plan to eat, just to clear his head. That's when he smelled it. Something warm. Something real. Not the artificial sense of candles or catered meals, but something softer. Familiar. Food. Freshly cooked. He frowned. The kitchen staff had left hours ago. Slowly, he stepped closer. The light in the kitchen was on, but dimmed. Not the bright overhead glare, but the small lamp near the counter. And there, standing on a wooden stool that looked too big for him, was Matteo. The little boy was stirring something in a pot. Carefully, deliberately, like he had done it before. Adrian froze. The child didn't notice him at first. His tiny hands held the spoon with surprising steadiness, his brows furrowed in concentration. Then, softly, he whispered to himself, "Not too fast. Mama says slow." Adrian felt something tighten in his chest. He stepped forward. The floor creaked. Matteo turned. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither of them moved. The boy didn't look scared. He didn't run. Instead, he simply studied Adrian, curious, calm, almost thoughtful. Then he said something that would stay with Adrian forever. "You're the man who looks sad." Adrian blinked. "What?" Matteo tilted his head. "I see you sometimes," he said quietly. "You walk like you forgot something." Adrian didn't know how to respond. No one had ever said something like that to him before. Not in boardrooms. Not in interviews. Not in his carefully constructed life. A 3-year-old had just seen something no one else had. "What are you doing?" Adrian finally asked. Matteo looked back at the pot. "Cooking," he said simply. Adrian glanced at the stove. "You shouldn't be doing this alone." The boy shrugged slightly. "I'm not alone," he said. "Mama's sleeping. She's tired." Adrian hesitated. He had never asked Lena about her life beyond work. Never wondered what her days, on nights, looked like. Now, standing in his kitchen, watching her toddler cook in the middle of the night, he realized how little he knew. "What are you making?" Adrian asked. Matteo smiled faintly. "Soup." "For who?" "For Mama," he said. She didn't eat dinner. Something inside Adrian shifted. He stepped closer, lowering himself slightly to the boy's level. Why not? Matteo's voice dropped. She says she's not hungry, he said, but she always says that when she's sad. Adrian's throat tightened. And you cook for her? He asked. Matteo nodded. She smiles when I do, he said softly. Adrian looked at the pot. Simple ingredients. Nothing expensive. Nothing perfect. But it smelled comforting. Alive. More alive than anything he had tasted in months. You shouldn't use the stove alone, Adrian said again, though his voice had softened. Matteo looked at him thoughtfully. I'm careful, he said. I stand strong. Adrian almost smiled. Almost. Then he noticed something else. A small notebook on the counter. Open. Filled with drawings. Stick figures. Pots. Hearts. And what looked like recipes in a child's handwriting. Did you make this? Adrian asked. Matteo nodded proudly. Mama teaches me, he said. She says cooking is love you can eat. Adrian stared at the page. Cooking is love you can eat. He had spent millions on meals that never meant that much. A quiet voice broke the moment. Matteo. Lena stood at the doorway, her face pale, her eyes wide. Fear, not of Adrian, but of what this might cost her. I'm so sorry, sir, she said quickly, rushing forward. He shouldn't be here. I told him. He must have. It's okay, Adrian said. She froze. What? It's okay, he repeated. Lena looked between him and her son, confused. Matteo tugged his sleeve. I made soup, he said softly. She knelt beside him, her expression softening instantly. You didn't have to, she whispered. I wanted to, he said. Lena closed her eye for a moment, holding back something deeper than words. Adrian watched them, and for the first time in a long time, the silence in his house didn't feel empty. It felt fragile, like something new had just begun. He didn't know it yet, but that small moment, that quiet kitchen, that little boy standing on a stool, cooking for his mother, was about to change everything. The next morning, everything looked the same, but nothing felt the same. Adrian sat at the long dining table, staring at a breakfast he barely touched. Fresh fruit, artisan bread, perfectly brewed coffee, every detail curated, every element flawless. And yet it felt hollow, because all he could think about was the soup, not the taste. He hadn't even tried it, but the intention behind it. A 3-year-old child had stayed up past midnight just to make sure his mother didn't go to bed hungry. Adrian couldn't remember the last time someone had done something like that for him, or the last time he had done something like that for anyone. Vanessa walked in, already dressed for the day, impeccable as always. You're up early, she said, glancing at her phone. Didn't sleep much, Adrian replied. She nodded absently. You have the investor call at 10, she said. And dinner tonight with the board. I confirmed 8 o'clock. Adrian hesitated. Cancelled dinner. She looked up. Why? I just don't want to go. Vanessa frowned slightly. That's not how this works, Adrian, she said. You don't skip important dinners because you're tired. It's not about being tired. Then what is it about? He didn't answer, because he didn't have the words yet. Across the house, Lena moved quietly through her routine, cleaning, organizing, maintaining the perfection that defined this place. Matteo sat at the kitchen table, drawing again, but today, Adrian noticed something new. A small bowl in front of Lena. Soup. She was eating it slowly, as if each spoonful mattered, as if she didn't want it to end. Adrian stood at the doorway, watching. Neither of them noticed him. Matteo looked up at her. Do you like it? He asked. Lena smiled. It's the best soup I've ever had, she said softly. Matteo beamed, and in that moment, Adrian realized something that unsettled him deeply. Nothing in his world, no deal, no success, no perfectly planned future, had ever created a moment like that. And that realization was only the beginning. Adrian tried to return to his routine. He really did. Meetings resumed. Calls stacked back to back. Assistants moved around him like clockwork, keeping his world efficient, predictable, controlled. But something had shifted, and control no longer felt like strength. It felt empty. That evening, instead of attending the board dinner Vanessa had insisted on, Adrian came home early. For the first time in years, the staff noticed, the house noticed, even the silence noticed. But what Adrian noticed most was the kitchen. He didn't go upstairs, didn't check his emails, didn't even take off his jacket. He walked straight there and found Matteo again, this time sitting on the counter, legs swinging, carefully peeling something that looked far too difficult for his tiny hands. A potato. Adrian leaned against the doorway. "You're working late again," he said. Matteo looked up and smiled like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm helping," he replied. Adrian stepped closer. "With what?" Matteo held up the unevenly peeled potato. "Dinner," he said proudly. Adrian glanced around. The kitchen was quieter than usual. No full staff. No elaborate preparations. Just simple ingredients laid out neatly. "Where's your mom?" Adrian asked. Matteo pointed toward the hallway. "She's washing clothes," he said. "Big ones." Adrian nodded slowly. He watched the boys struggle slightly with the peeler. "Careful," Adrian said. "That's sharp." Matteo frowned in concentration. "I know," he said. "Mama says I have to respect sharp things." Adrian let out a quiet breath. "Your mom teaches you a lot." Matteo nodded. "She says I have to learn now," he said, "so I can help later." "Help with what?" Matteo looked at him like the answer was obvious. "Everything." Adrian didn't speak for a moment. At 33, he had built companies, closed million-dollar deals, made decisions that impacted thousands of lives. And yet, no one had ever described responsibility as simply as that. Everything. "Why do you help so much?" Adrian asked. Matteo shrugged. "Because Mama gets tired," he said softly. "And when she's tired, she smiles less." The words landed heavier than they should have. Adrian looked away briefly, his jaw tightening. "And you don't like that?" he asked. Matteo shook his head. "I like when she smiles," he said. "It feels warm." Warm. Adrian repeated the word in his mind. His house had temperature control in every room. But warmth? That was something else entirely. "Do you always cook for her?" Adrian asked. Matteo nodded. "Sometimes," he said. "Not always good." Adrian almost smiled. "What happens when it's not good?" Matteo grinned. "She eats it anyway." That made something inside Adrian ache. Not painfully, but deeply. Lena entered the kitchen a moment later, stopping abruptly when she saw Adrian. "I'm sorry, sir," she said quickly. "I didn't realize he was." "It's fine," Adrian interrupted gently. She hesitated. Her eyes flickered to Matteo, then back to Adrian. "I'll take him," she said, stepping forward. "No," Adrian said. She froze. "No." Adrian shook his head. "He's not doing anything wrong." Matteo looked between them, sensing something unspoken. "I'm helping," he added quietly. Lena swallowed. "I know," she whispered, brushing his hair back. "You always are." Adrian watched the interaction closely. There was no performance in it. No politeness for the sake of appearances. Just truth. Simple, unfiltered truth. "Sit," Adrian said suddenly. Both of them looked at him. "Excuse me." Lena asked. "Sit," he repeated, gesturing toward the table. "I'll finish dinner." Silence. Lena blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. "You, what?" "I'll cook," Adrian said. Matteo's eyes lit up. "You can cook?" he asked. Adrian hesitated. "Not really." Matteo grinned. "I can help." Lena let out a small, uncertain breath. "Sir, you don't have to." "I know," Adrian said. Then, more quietly, "I want to." And for the first time in his life, Adrian Hale stepped into a kitchen not as the owner of the house, but as someone trying to create something for someone else. It didn't go smoothly. He cut things unevenly, burned the first attempt, forgot ingredients Matteo insisted were important for love. But Matteo guided him, patiently, confidently, like a tiny teacher who believed mistakes were just part of learning. Not too fast, Matteo reminded. Slow, Adrian repeated, almost to himself. Lena watched from the table, her expression shifting from confusion to something softer, something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. Relief. When the food was finally ready, it wasn't perfect, but it was real. They sat together, all three of them. No long dining table, no formal settings, just a small corner of the kitchen. Matteo took a bite first, then looked at Adrian seriously. "It's okay," he said. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "Just okay." Matteo nodded. "But better than last time," he added. Adrian laughed, actually laughed, and it surprised him. Lena tasted it next. She didn't say anything right away. Instead, she smiled, softly, genuinely. "It's good," she said. Adrian looked at her, not the way he usually looked at people, evaluating, measuring, but seeing, really seeing. And in that moment, something inside him settled. Not completely, but enough to realize that everything he had built, all the money, all the success, had never taught him this. How to sit at a table with people who expected nothing from him, and still give something real. Later that night, Vanessa confronted him. "You skipped an important dinner," she said sharply. "I know. You embarrass me." Adrian sighed. "I didn't mean to." "That doesn't matter," she replied. "Perception matters." He looked at her, really looked, and for the first time, he noticed what was missing. Not beauty, not intelligence, warmth. "I had dinner here," he said. "With the staff." "With Lena and Matteo." Vanessa stared at him like he had just said something absurd. "You're joking." "I'm not." She let out a short laugh. "Adrian, they work for you." "They're people," he said quietly. "They're employees," she corrected. And there it was, the line, clear, cold, unmoving. Adrian didn't argue. He didn't need to, because for the first time, he wasn't confused about what he felt. That night, he didn't sleep in the same room as Vanessa, and he didn't feel guilty about it. Because somewhere between a burned dinner, a child's quiet wisdom, and a simple bowl of soup, Adrian had started to understand something he had been missing his entire life. Love wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself in grand gestures or perfect plans. It showed up quietly, in small kitchens, in tired smiles, in 3-year-old hands trying their best. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. The engagement ended on a Tuesday morning. No shouting, no dramatic scene. Just a quiet conversation in a house that suddenly felt too big for pretense. Vanessa stood near the window, sunlight catching the edges of her perfectly styled hair. "This is a mistake," she said. Adrian shook his head. "No," he replied calmly. "It would be a mistake if I didn't end it." She crossed her arms. "Over what?" "Dinner with your maid." Adrian met her gaze. "No," he said, "over realizing I don't feel anything real in this relationship." The words were simple, but they carried a truth neither of them could deny. Vanessa's expression hardened. "You're throwing away a perfect future." Adrian exhaled slowly. "It wasn't perfect," he said. "It was planned." By the afternoon, she was gone. No chaos, no regret, just absence. But unlike before, this silence didn't feel empty. It felt honest. Days passed, then weeks, and something unexpected happened. The house began to change, not in structure, but in spirit. The kitchen became louder, not with staff, but with laughter. Small, unpolished, real laughter. Matteo now had a stool that actually fit him. Adrian had bought it himself, without overthinking it. Too big, Matteo had said about the old one. So Adrian fixed it. Simple. Lena still worked. She still moved with the same quiet efficiency, but something about her had softened. She no longer looked like she was bracing for something to go wrong. She started sitting during meals, not because she was told to, but because she felt allowed to. One evening, as the three of them sat together again, Matteo asked a question that made Lena freeze. "Are we staying?" Lena looked at Adrian immediately, her eyes filled with something fragile. Uncertainty. Hope. Fear. Adrian didn't answer right away, because this wasn't a question about employment. It was something deeper. He looked at Matteo, then at Lena, and finally said, "Yes." Not as an employer, but as someone who understood what staying meant. Time moved differently after that. Slower, but fuller. Adrian started coming home earlier, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He still ran his empire, still made decisions that shaped industries, but those things no longer defined him completely. One night, he found Matteo asleep at the kitchen table, a crayon still in his hand, a drawing beneath him. Adrian gently lifted the paper. It showed 3 figures, one tall, one medium, one small, holding hands, under a crooked sun. "What is this?" Adrian asked softly when Matteo stirred awake. The boy blinked sleepily. "Our family," he said. The word hit differently than anything Adrian had ever heard. Family, not business, not obligation, not expectation. Family. Later, Adrian found Lena in the hallway. "She didn't teach him that," she said quietly. "I know," Adrian replied. "He just decided it." Lena nodded, her voice trembling slightly. "He does that," she whispered. "He sees things before I can explain them." Adrian smiled faintly. "I think he sees things we forget to look for." There was a long pause. Then Lena spoke again. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Adrian looked at her. "Doing what?" "Letting us stay," she said. "Changing everything." He thought about it carefully, then answered honestly, "Because for the first time in my life, this doesn't feel like something I'm buying." Lena's eyes filled with tears she didn't try to hide. Months later, the house was no longer just a mansion. It was a home. Not perfect, not quiet, not controlled, but alive. And sometimes, late at night, Adrian would walk into the kitchen, not because he couldn't sleep, but because he remembered. The first time he saw a 3-year-old standing on a stool, cooking something simple, for someone he loved, and how that moment, so small, so quiet, had changed everything. Because in the end, it wasn't the billions that defined Adrian Hale. It wasn't the deals, the power, the reputation. It was the night he realized that love didn't need to be impressive. It just needed to be real. And sometimes, it came in the smallest hands, holding a spoon, trying their best. And that was more than enough.